Hello and welcome to the Fog channel. This is a video about the best video game that's ever been made, and it's called
The Witcher 3.
How and why it's still the reigning, defending, undisputed champion of the gaming world, the Butcher of Blaviken, Geralt of Rivia. Let me just start off by saying that I am most definitely very biased. And I admit that I'm biased because I just absolutely love this game. It is my favorite game of all time. I pretty much do a full playthrough every year. And to me, it's utterly mind-blowing that The Witcher 3 came out in 2015. That's nearly 7 years ago. And there's not been anything even nearly as good since then, or prior. And that's even with all the technological advancements we've had since then. It's actually kind of crazy when you think of it. On top of that, The Witcher 2 came out in 2011, which was 4 years earlier, and the difference between the two games is insane. Not just graphically either. Quite literally, every aspect got huge improvements within those 4 years. And given that The Witcher 4 is most likely under development right now, and that's based on numerous reports, and if I was to guess, we'll probably be seeing it in 2024, maybe 2025, which would mean a 10-year gap between the two games. And if the improvements from The Witcher 2 to The Witcher 3 are anything to go by, well, I'd have to say we're in for an absolute special treat with The Witcher 4. Although what happened with Cyberpunk 2077 does concern me somewhat. CD Projekt Red did not do all that well with it, unfortunately.
I and the entire leadership team are deeply sorry for this, and this video is me publicly owning up to that.
In all honesty, The Witcher 3 is by far hugely superior to Cyberpunk in pretty much every aspect. Maybe not graphically, but it's still really close. Close enough to the point where most of us would still rather play The Witcher 3 than Cyberpunk, I think. But anyway, let's just go ahead and talk about The Witcher 3, and we'll also talk a little bit about The Witcher 4. We'll start with the basics, graphics. I mean, you'd expect a 7-year-old game to show its age. But the truth is, The Witcher 3 just doesn't. The graphics are still incredible. Well, at least on PC they are. The console version isn't really as good graphically, and it does only run at 30 frames per second, whereas on PC I can get around about 90 to 100 frames per second with everything on Ultra in 1440p. However, CD Projekt Red is in the process of developing a next-gen version of The Witcher 3, which is scheduled for release on next-gen consoles and PC sometime in 2022, giving it a visual makeover, which is awesome, and I honestly cannot wait to see what that looks like. I run an RTX 3060 Ti, and right now the game just looks beautiful. I mean, there's so much detail here. The lighting is superb, and you can add mods to it, which makes the game even better. I'd say it matches any current game that uses ray tracing, in my opinion. And I have no idea how much more of an improvement it can even get on PC with this next-gen update. But as I said, still very curious to see what it will look like. Next on the list, we'll talk about combat and leveling and progression. I really don't think there are many games out there in, well, pretty much any kind of genre that can even begin to compare to the gameplay in The Witcher 3. Sure, I agree, it could be even better. And I'm very sure that CD Projekt Red will look to make improvements in this particular area for The Witcher 4. But if we take a good look at the combat here in The Witcher 3, in my opinion, it is its simplicity that allows it to feel as satisfying as it is. From the blocking to the dodging, the rolling, the parrying, and of course, the sword swings themselves. It all just works. And if you partner that with everything else the game gives you, like all the loot that you can find in the world and using signs and rune stones that you slot in your swords, which then gives you extra perks like freezing and bleeding, it all just complements itself almost to perfection, at least in this particular context. Pretty much to the point where you don't really need the combat to be much different than what it already is. And I honestly hope that CD Projekt Red don't end up messing around with it too much to the point that they end up ruining it for The Witcher 4. Because again, we really don't need anything too intricate. Just, take the blueprint from The Witcher 3, give it better hit registration, make a couple of adjustments, maybe add in some new animations and just leave it there, Just a bit of polish, that's it. That's all we need. Another great thing that goes nicely hand in hand with the combat system and mechanics are the leveling and progression systems. In The Witcher 3, it is very satisfying to level up, because every time you do, you get an experience point that then lets you unlock a special perk that you can then add into your skill tree, basically giving you an incredible sense of freedom when it comes to creating builds. The diversity here when it comes to making builds just doesn't really exist in any other game, I don't think. Not in this way. At least not in the terms of the context at play here. It's so superbly designed and so incredibly satisfying. And again, I honestly hope CD Projekt Red take the same blueprint that they're using here and they just build upon it for The Witcher 4. Now we'll move on to the world itself. I truly believe this is where the game shines brightest. The open world design is quite possibly the best I've ever experienced, and I think the actual reason for that is that it isn't completely open world like GTA or Cyberpunk. The fact the whole map just isn't slammed together to make a massive world actually benefits towards immersion here. It also makes each different place more memorable and easier to recognize. It also gives the player a sense that the world is much bigger than this, and that we're only experiencing certain areas or states or sections of it, which comes together beautifully when combined with the absolute best fast travel system that we've ever seen in any game ever. I tell you, I've been playing New World, which is Amazon's new game if you're not familiar with it, and not only is the map absolutely gigantic, but the fast travel system is just terrible. It's the worst ever. I don't understand why open world games just don't make simple and effective fast travel systems, just like we see here in The Witcher 3. It's baffling why other games don't just outright copy it. You see, this system allows players not to get bored. You can just fast travel and keep playing, rather than running around for 15 minutes to then be able to continue to play the game. Yes, you have to unlock each fast travel point by getting close to it before you can start using it indefinitely and without cost or penalty, but that's part of the beauty of this system, because it rewards you if you explore. It's perfect. And even if you don't want to fast travel, you have a horse. You have mounted travel, which means you can move through the map quickly and effectively. So simple. And it's a damn shame that other games don't do the same. Yes, I'm looking at you, New World. Anyway, moving on to the content of the world itself. Another home run, in my opinion. The variety of monsters you encounter, the variety of activities you discover through exploration, the many caves that you can explore, everything is just phenomenal. Sure, we could have even more stuff to find and do, but is it really necessary? Given the fact the sheer volume of missions and quests and contracts are utterly almost overwhelming. Why would you even need more activities to find in the world? There is not a single game out there that gives you this much quality content for the kind of price you can pick up The Witcher 3 for. I mean, nothing is even close. And let's not forget, there is not one single microtransaction inside The Witcher 3. And let's hope the same happens with The Witcher 4. When it comes to the story, I think it's safe to say that a lot more people are now familiar with the Witcher series story. I think we can all thank Netflix for that, so thank you, Netflix. But the reality is the story has been available since 1986, when the very first publication of The Witcher, in the form of a short story, ever came to be. There have been 9 books since then, as well as 3 games, a couple of card games, including Thronebreaker, which is an awesome game if you've never tried that, a Netflix series, as we know, a novel, and a couple of spin-offs. The Witcher universe is fascinating, and I'm incredibly surprised it isn't as big as Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings. but maybe it'll get there. Who knows? Geralt of Rivia is by far one of the most interesting and loved characters in gaming ever created. And in general too, is quite possibly my favorite character out of any science fiction story. Here in The Witcher 3, the story and everything to do with the story is simply superbly laid out. The game actually has a total of 36 different endings, which are dictated by the choices you make in-game. There are dozens and dozens of characters and NPCs that you're going to interact with and have full-blown conversations and adventures with, and these conversations and adventures all give you bits of info towards the lore of the Witcher universe. There are relationships that you can choose to develop with different people, side quests that are longer than the main story missions, just so the game can develop one single character. It's astonishing how much depth there is inside this one game, which, by the way, I picked up for £3.99. Sure, it's 7 years later, but still. And it comes with the best expansions you will ever see a developer make for a game ever. Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine pretty much give a whole entire separate game. For anyone that started gaming like a year or two ago and have been used to playing Call of Duty and Fortnite and Apex Legends and New Worlds and end up picking up The Witcher 3, they'll be totally blown away by the sheer volume of value that comes with it. There's literally nothing like it. There's so many complaints nowadays about incomplete games and broken games and cash grabs and so on and so forth. And yes, The Witcher 3 took a while to become what it is today, but nonetheless, it is mind-boggling that this is a 7-year-old game. And what else can even be said about this masterpiece? Maybe the fact that although The Witcher 3 isn't really a looter, it still does loot better than most looters. Finding the different armor sets to create unique builds, finding named relic swords that have awesome stats and perks, all of it done with incredible style, and it all works perfectly when combined with the excellent crafting system, which in turn goes along beautifully with the leveling and progression mechanic as well. There's just so much that makes this game quite literally the only must-play video game out there. It did have bugs and glitches and certain issues, but over time, CD Projekt Red did a great job in patching it all out, which basically means right now is quite literally the perfect time to play it. There's not really much else to be said. I mean, details make all the difference, and you'll probably never see a more perfectly detailed game ever again. But I well and truly hope CD Projekt Red make Witcher 4 even bigger and better. But again, seeing what happened to Cyberpunk has really gotten me worried. My expectation is damaged, but nonetheless, we'll see. There is still hope, and this probably about does it. Please leave your comments below. Let me know if you've played The Witcher. Let me know what your favorite thing about it is and what you would expect to see in The Witcher 4 and what you'd like to see in The Witcher 4. Thank you very much for stopping by. Make sure to, subscribe and like the video, whatever, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you very much. A goodbye.
Farewell.